Watch this.
It's our position that the law as it stands does not prohibit classroom discussion on topics related to abortion.
Another Idaho abortion law, another lawsuit. The No Public Funds for Abortion Act is getting the legal look over because some professors say they can't teach how they used to teach.
I seen it coming and I go, oh, it's coming in all the way.
It wasn't intended to be a drive-through tattoo parlor, but last night, a car came in all the way at Captain Jack's, all while Jack was working at his desk. It wasn't a bird or a plane, not even Superman. It was the International Space Station doing a drive-by over the Treasure Valley. You may not have seen it. Oh, but it definitely saw you. Idaho's abortion laws haven't exactly been a model of clarity, according to a lot of doctors, nurses, universities, professors, and some lawyers who deal with the topic on a regular basis. Whether it's about what qualifies as an exception, a police report to prove a rape, or can it be just a medical emergency, or does it have to be imminent death? What about the opinions or the options doctors are allowed to offer their patients? Can they refer them out of state? And what is abortion trafficking? Can a 23-year-old take his 16-year-old sister to Washington State for a procedure without telling her parents? Well, all three of those scenarios, actually the laws dealing with those scenarios, are all under a legal challenge of some sort presently. And today you can add another to that list, the No Public Funds for Abortion Act, and what discussions are allowed to be had in the classroom when it comes to abortion. It's been the law of the land since Governor Brad Little signed it in May of 2021. It passed mostly along party lines, stating no government agency can do business with an abortion provider, nor can any state employee promote, refer, or counsel for abortion. But critics of the law say it impedes speech, and it's vague. It was vague enough for the University of Idaho to send out a memo to its employees last September titled Guidance on Abortion Laws. Remember that? The memo warned staff whose salaries are paid by public dollars, promoting abortion could make them a criminal. It even went so far to say the school would no longer provide birth control on campus. So the question is, what constitutes as promoting? Some professors across the state fear their classroom content could apply under that category. So in response, they have filed a lawsuit, which is a good time to bring in Andrew Bartline, who's learned there is really no clear carve-out for classroom content. Andrew?
Yeah, but there could have been, Brian. Republican Representative Bruce Skog sponsored the original bill that created this No Public Funds for Abortion law back in 2021. He also tried to amend the law last legislative session, and part of that amendment included this sentence specifically. The term, quote, promote, shall not be interpreted as preventing any classroom discussion on the subject of abortion at a school, college, or university. And this amendment received support from anti-abortion groups. That includes the Roman Catholic Church and the Idaho Family Policy Center. They say this amendment was redundant, however. To clarify, what they already say is how the law should be enforced, but professors say they still need that assurance. The Dobbs decision struck down nearly 50 years of a federally protected right to abortion. It's impacted more than just patients, where Idaho's No Public Funds for Abortion Act also tied strings to local government funding.
The purpose of the legislation was to protect taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or provide abortions.
Blaine Kanzati helped write the law.
Yep.
The president of the Idaho Family Policy Center, he writes a lot of these laws, including updates.
The intent behind the 2023 amendment was simply to alleviate concerns by the universities and colleges.
A concern clearly defined by the University of Idaho. In a letter to faculty, the university warned about discussing abortion in the classroom, stating, quote, academic freedom is not a defense to violation of law. The amendment tried to draw a clear line between the two, but died in a committee drawer, leading to a lawsuit filed today on behalf of college professors across the state.
The only complaint in the lawsuit today is that the law violates the academic expression rights of faculty members. The goal of the legislation is not to limit free expression when it comes to the issue of abortion, so classroom discussion about the issue of abortion.
But plaintiffs say that's exactly what it's doing, Professor Alita Quinn says the law made her biomedical ethics class one-sided, ironically, making it unethical itself. Professor Casey Johnson says 2 of her ethics classes have the same problem. And Professor Zachary Turpin says 2 literature courses no longer discuss an essay where a nurse explains her mixed emotions as an abortion provider. But Blaine doesn't buy it.
It reeks of political theater to me. So academic discussion taking place in the classroom on topics related to abortion and various perspectives on abortion is allowed under the law.
Where is that written in the law?
So
It's not.
let me pull up the bill itself. Schools shall not be allowed to promote an abortion, and promote would be advocate.
And that's according to Blaine, because the word advocate is not written in the bill even once. The word promote is undefined in law.
It's our position that the law as it stands does not prohibit classroom discussion on topics related to abortion.
But the opinion that matters resides in the county prosecutors. 3 are listed as defendants in the lawsuit: Ada, Bannock, and Latah, home to Idaho's 3 four-year public colleges. The ACLU wrote letters last year and asked each county prosecutor to assure they will not prosecute university faculty for, quote, favorable ideas about abortion. The lawsuit says the ACLU didn't get a response. If that amendment passed in 2023 to change this law, could this lawsuit even be filed?
Well, you can claim whatever you want when you file a complaint. I don't think that amendment would have substantially changed the effect of the law at all.
Okay, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, Andrew, in the story there. This idea that some of the words aren't in the bill, but that's a reuse, promote versus, what was the word, advocate.
Yep.
That's his opinion, but that's not a legal opinion. This is a guy who's a lobbyist who kind of crafts these bills and then brings them to legislators to get them passed.
The problem specifically with what the faculty at these universities are saying is simply that, is it's not explicitly written that we may or may not be punished for what we teach in our classrooms. And this idea of it being hung up of the word promote means advocate, I think they would appreciate hearing the guy that wrote this law saying that, but he's not the one who enforces that law. And so that's the problem, and getting no response from prosecutors across the state where these universities reside. I think that's the crux of it with this lawsuit. We're still waiting to get more details about people on behalf of this lawsuit. But those 2 together really do tie a tight string, and it starts to make sense when you piece it up.
And it kind of is that what is constituting a promotion if it's just a discussion? I guess it depends on what you talk about.
We're talking about an ethics class, right? You talk about pros and cons. That pros part of the discussion is that promoting.
Right.
They don't know.
All right. One more legal procedure to go through when it comes to Idaho's abortion laws. Thank you very much, Andrew.
We've created this information campaign to let Idahoans know where they can access safe and legal abortion outside of the state of Idaho.
Soon, you'll just have to look up to find out for yourself.
There'll be 6 billboards initially that will be around the Treasure Valley. We intend to have these up for a good deal of time to bring awareness to where they can receive that care.
That was from a couple of weeks ago when Planned Parenthood told us they were planning to put up billboards to let pregnant women know their options when it comes to certain medical procedures. They also told us they've had patients come to them who weren't sure abortion is legal outside of Idaho, or if traveling to a neighboring state to receive that care, whether or not they would be considered a criminal. The confusion, Planned Parenthood says, is getting in the way of the doctor-patient relationship. Neither side sure what they would be allowed to talk about. All of this following Idaho's Attorney General's opinion on what doctors can tell their patients about abortion. Well, those billboards are now up. This one in Boise saying abortion is legal in Oregon and Washington. Color scheme is simple and pretty much hard to miss. And so is the message. It says across the top there, extreme politicians in Idaho want you to know this. Don't want you to know this, I should say. Planned Parenthood does. As you heard, they plan to keep these billboards in place for at least a little while. Meanwhile, Oregon's Secretary of State is about to put the will of the people to the test, telling nearly a dozen state senators they are no longer qualified to hold public office after what they did this past legislative session. Last November, Oregon voters overwhelmingly passed Measure 113, including a vast majority of eastern Oregon counties. That measure amended their constitution to say any member of the legislature who missed 10 or more floor sessions 10 or more unexcused absences, shall be deemed, quote, disorderly behavior and disqualify them from holding public office for the term following their current one. And that means for most of them, following this year and the 2024 election, they can no longer run for office or at least hold office. Well, the longest walkout in Oregon history, which began on May 3rd, ended on June 15th, a lot more than 10 days, of course. We spoke with Oregon State Senator Lynn Finley, who represents the state's largest district by land, covering about 10 counties from eastern to central Oregon. When we spoke with Senator Finley back on May 25th, when he was already way past his limit, he said he was fine with the punishment.
My oath of office means more to me than personal gain. And therefore, I'm willing to sacrifice that so I can look myself in the mirror and say, well, I'm doing everything I can to comply with my oath of office, even if it means that I'm no longer going to be a senator after the next election.
We were told back then they were protesting kind of how some of these bills were written, not in easily readable language. That's why they started their walkout and lasted until June 15th. Secretary of State LaVon Griffin-Velarde announced this afternoon, after consulting with several lawyers, she intends to enforce Measure 113. So I guess we'd be in the finding out phase for the Republicans' rebellion plan. What began as a usually quiet Monday night on the Boise bench certainly didn't end that way for one tattoo shop. Usually just some music, maybe a few ows, might be all you would hear at Captain Jack's Parlor on Emerald. But last night, the monotony of ink in skin was interrupted by a loud crash.
I imagined it happening a lot of times in my mind. Sure enough, it did. He was 6 feet inside the building. He came around a corner off of Orchard and hit that rain-soaked asphalt, and he broke traction. I seen it coming, and I go, oh, it's coming in all the way, so I just pushed back like this. So he was like flying when he came in. That's all cinder block and concrete and stone. It took a lot of force to knock all that down. Look at the explosion, bam! There was 2 young men and a young lady in the car together. I'm just thankful that nobody was hurt. That's his license plate bracket. Just one of those things that happens in life.
It's been happening a little bit more frequently lately. It's been a bad week for cars versus buildings. A lot more than usual. It isn't the only news, though, you need to know about. With other happenings from the 208, here's Morgan Romero with the 411.
Nampa has a new map. Not exactly the kind that helps you get around town, but maybe to see what areas to avoid. It's a crime map.
It allows our community members to see what's going on in their neighborhoods, and hopefully it will also encourage those people to call us more often.
The map updates every 24 hours and shows all the calls that happen throughout Nampa. But don't worry, they won't post exact addresses or victims' names. They also won't publish sensitive calls like sexual assaults. Idaho needs blood. The American Red Cross says they're in need of donations after a shortfall of about 25,000 pints this summer. Right now, they say they need type O positive and negative and types A and B negative. It's easy to help out. Just schedule an appointment on redcrossblood.org. And there's something in it for you other than that warm feeling of helping. Those who donate in the month of August get a $10 e-movie gift card.
I'll definitely miss them, but I love you guys. And it'll be a quick year.
For 250 National Guard members, that year ended today. 12 months ago, 600 of Idaho's Army National Guard were deployed to Southeast Asia as part of Operation Spartan Shield. This would be the first wave welcomed home by family and friends at Gowan Field. Hundreds more will be home later this week. It may have seemed like a quick year, but many of them are returning to big changes on the home front.
They've both grown a ton. Seeing them in person, there's just no substitute.
It might be easy to see how climate change is impacting Idaho's most populated areas, but as wide open as the Gem State is, it might be hard to gauge in our rural areas. The U of I is getting $6 million in competitive funding to see how rural communities think about climate change. Why rural? Because those areas provide the most food, energy, and water and don't always get asked their thoughts on climate change. The topics will mainly focus on extreme heat, wildfires, drought, the things we deal with here in Idaho. All of these findings will help guide policy to help improve how we use our resources to make our planet more stable. We all know we like the 208, but so do vacationers. According to the Idaho Department of Commerce, tourism nonprofits in North Idaho are getting nearly $2 million in grant money. The grants come after people spent more money on tourism in the last 2 years. They'll use the money to market different cities, towns, and regions as travel destinations. More than $10 million has been awarded across Idaho compared to the nearly $9.5 million in 2022. And that's your 411 on the 208.
Ever wonder what you look like from space? Very small is the answer. We're getting a view of you and pretty much everyone else in the Treasure Valley as the International Space Station flew overhead. How about you drive by and say hi to us? Or better yet, send us a text message. The number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Don't forget, use your name and the hashtag the 208. That way, we know it's for us. And if you keep it clean, keep it concise, and, of course, clever, we may show your comment at the end of the show.
Some phenomenal photos from the storms that rolled through over the last several days. And on the heels of last night's active weather, we had a weather phenomenon we don't typically see in the month of August. We had some fog across the Treasure Valley, but not just the Treasure Valley. This is that view from Tamarack Resort. So remember, the summit is at 7,700 feet, so above the fog that built in over Lake Cascade. But watch as I put this time lapse into motion. You start seeing those clouds lift. You can see blue sky. There's that beautiful lake with the clouds reflected. So it ended up being a really pretty day up in Long Valley. It's not been bad here in the Treasure Valley either. So far, Boise has only hit 81 degrees. That's as hot as we've gotten for this August afternoon. How pleasant has it been today? Lots of clear skies. And again, this morning started off foggy. It looked like smoke. And I'll admit, I thought it was smoke at the beginning because we just don't see fog very often in August. But all of that lifted and we've left with blue skies, some light northwesterly winds, and really comfy conditions in the valleys. It's been still just a bit overcast in places like Sun Valley and in McCall because of some lingering moisture on the backside of that system from yesterday. But all in all, it's been pretty pleasant. I've not seen any rain showers popping up across the region except in far eastern Idaho today. So today's observed high temperatures so far, Stanley has only gotten to 68 degrees, upper 70s for Jerome and Twin Falls. Boise at 81. Caldwell just barely climbed out of the 70s in the last hour or so. So we are warming up. I don't know that we'll get to my original forecast high of 87 for today, but if I'm going to be wrong, I think in mid-August, I'd rather be wrong in that direction than to get it off by 6 degrees the other way, right? And we will have more typical summer heat setting in soon. So here's that setup. The area of low pressure moving off to our east. We have another weak disturbance that will skirt by well to the north of us tomorrow and into Thursday. It won't really do much except to maybe bump our temperatures back down a little bit on Thursday and send some clouds into the central mountains, possibly an isolated sprinkle or two tomorrow. And then after that, high pressure really starts to take over. It'll amplify across the west, and that will send our temperatures climbing. So, hey, if you're trying to get in maybe one last river float before school starts next week, this weekend will probably be the time to do it. And as I say that, I picture everybody just going out. So go early if you're going to try to rent a raft, right? Go as early as you can. It'll likely be busy on the river. Tomorrow might be a good time to go if you have the availability. Look at this, 93 for Boise and Mountain Home tomorrow. Caldwell, upper 80s. Ontario, around 90 tomorrow. We'll see highs around 90 for Jerome and Twin Falls as well. So tomorrow, low 90s. Temperatures dip just that little tiny bit on Thursday, and then look what ramps up over the weekend and into next week. In fact, by Tuesday, we may see some parts of the Treasure Valley up to those triple digits, but all in all, sunny, dry, and seasonably warm long term.
Okay, so where were you Saturday night? Just before 7-ish? Remember what you were doing? Well, if you weren't looking up into the atmosphere, there's a pretty good chance you may have missed it. But whatever you might have been up to at that time, it was captured in miniature by the passing International Space Station, who then promptly posted it on social media.
At 17,500 miles an hour, following the curvature of the Earth across the Cascade Range, a section of southwestern Idaho from 250 miles above. A very high bird's eye view from about John Day, Oregon to Twin Falls at 6:57 on Saturday night. The Payette River, the Boise River. Oh look, there's Lake Lowell. Ontario, Nampa, Emmett, the City of Trees. There's the Snake River, and if that probably unimportant part of the International Space Station wasn't in the way, you could probably see Idaho City. Could somebody get that thing out of the way?
All right, just kind of scrolling through some of the messages people sent in today, like this one regarding Idaho's abortion laws. I've always maintained the legislature and the governor signed these laws have opened up a, quote, Pandora's box that really costing taxpayers a lot of money. That's kind of where we're going with that one. It is costing a lot of money, but I guess that's kind of the case. Once we get through this, everything kind of settles down. Reed in Nampa says, you want marijuana, go to Oregon. You want abortion, go to Oregon. It's that simple. The intent of the lawsuits against the abortion bill are the same as lawsuits and criminal action against Trump. Says that these are moving a little too fast. I don't know why it's doing that. But basically, he's saying the intent of the lawsuits is kind of tie things up to prevent the will of the people. Kind of the same thing, which is kind of what Blaine Canzati said today as well. All right, let's get to this last one here. Skip through some of these really quickly. All right, discuss versus promote. This one from Paul. Don't those censoring teachers and libraries claim that mentioning sex or identity, let me finish that up, doesn't that constitute promoting those things? Just having, say, a book in the library about transgender, about homosexuality, doesn't that promote the topic? So I guess the other side of the argument is just talking about it in a classroom. Would that be considered promoting abortion? One of the things to consider with these lawsuits. We'll see you tomorrow with better text messages, I think.